Chapter 626. Yiqing Luo spoke extremely slowly as her voice was filled with gentleness, leisurely and contented. She didn't anxiously hope that they would agree, nor did she have the feeling that it didn't matter whether they agreed or not. She just calmly stated the truth. Your choice to me doesn't have much use. But to you, it's a choice of fate. Yiqing Luo saw the leader's hand, which was about to tear the paper, stopped as he stiffly maintained the action of tearing the paper. He was stunned for some time before he stiffly moved his arm. What do you have to make us believe you? Yiqing Luo's smile was brimming with confidence. Based on the fact that I'm Yiqing Luo. The 30 or so members were completely stunned. Just how arrogant was this young lady? Based on the fact that she was Yiqing Luo. She had that much confidence in herself? Not knowing why, the group members had an urge to believe her. In their minds, the scene of what Xianxia had done for Lanling Nua appeared, which made one's heart turn cold. Looking at the ground full of corpses, their hearts ached. The main culprit of all these was Yiqing Luo. But Xianxia definitely had something to do with it. Xianxia abandoned his own brothers, and under his brother's cover he left. Yet these brothers of his had died here. Their group leader abandoned them. His 5 fingers curled up one by one. The leader of the group grabbed the piece of paper in his hand, as though he was making a huge decision. In the end, the leader kept the paper into his bosom as he gritted his teeth. I hope that we will never have the chance to meet again. Yiqing Luo smiled in disbelief. I'm afraid this chance is not too far away. The 30 or so members left angrily. Looking at their departing figures, Kitty Lee blinked her watery eyes as she hooked onto Yiqing Luo's arm. Sister, why did you give them that piece of proof? The world group, which was personally written by Yiqing Luo, was stamped by the vice group leader. This piece of paper represented Yiqing Luo. Giving this piece of paper to those people in Blue Dragon Group, wasn't she afraid that these despicable people would use that piece of proof to secretly do some sinister things? Momentarily, everyone was unable to understand Yiqing Luo's thoughts. These people, if we can rope them in and keep them for our own use, as long as we give them enough sincerity, they will definitely follow us through life and death. In just a short period of time, Yiqing Luo had already understood these people's characters. These people valued friendship and loyalty. With proper training, it wouldn't take long for them to stand on their own in the mercenary world. But aren't we going to be in the academy? Yan Shaoyi didn't understand what Yiqing Luo meant. All the members of the world group were all students of the devil class. They went to school together and cultivated together on holidays. They only had 3 days a month. If he were to accept these people into the world group, wouldn't it be a huge mess? A portion of them are students of the Celestial Phoenix Academy. Their holidays are the same as ours. Yiqing Luo explained patiently. The other group are professional mercenaries, relying on completing missions to support themselves. We can establish a second group, and when we are all in the academy, we can represent the world group to head to the Mercenary Association to accept missions and grind for some honor points. Xiao Jin shook his head in disagreement. Even if it's the second group, they still represent the world group. If they were to use this opportunity to defame us. Chapter 627. I understand Yiqing Luo's intention. Long Yunzhan nodded. I agree. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she exchanged glances with him and smiled. It was because Long Yunzhan didn't reject her intention earlier. That was why Yiqing Luo passed the proof to those group members after they left the Magic Beast Forest. Long Yunzhan didn't reject this decision. The others would also agree and listen to her. The riddle which the two of them were playing earlier was because of this matter. Seeing that Long Yunzhan had already spoken, the other youngsters had their suspicions, but they still chose to believe in their judgment. They knew that Yiqing Luo and Long Yunzhan would absolutely not harm the world group. Lil Luo, today's biggest contributor is me. Don't tell me you shouldn't give me a little special reward? An arm went past Yiqing Luo's hand as it circled around her slender waist. Following that, a refreshing and elegant sandalwood fragrance assaulted their nostrils. The man's broad embrace was tightly pressed against the woman's soft back. His smooth lower jaw was pressed against Yiqing Luo's shoulder as his voice was deep and mellow. The other hand went past her other shoulder as it clasped her lower jaw. He forced her gaze to look in his direction. Yiqing Luo's thick and dense eyelashes fluttered like a butterfly's wings. Her bright pupils reflected that peerless beauty of a face. That pair of watery peach blossom eyes gazed at her lovingly. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly trembled as she felt her cheeks turning red, as though her energy had been sucked dry by him. Evildoer. A living evildoer who could bring calamity to the country and people. Her peripheral vision saw those youngsters' ridiculing gazes, and Yiqing Luo's cheeks turned even hotter as she turned around and faced Zhou Xian as she pushed his chest. Nonsense, the biggest contributor is obviously me. Then I'll give you a reward. The man's voice had just ended when Yiqing Luo felt her lower jaw tightening. Following that, a warm touch covered her pink lips. That elegant sandalwood fragrance became more and more intense as it spread in her mouth. His kiss was strong and overbearing as it sealed her struggles and sealed her consciousness. What remained was only a kiss that was compatible with him. In Yiqing Luo's mind, it was as though there was a taut string that suddenly broke apart. A scorching flame was burning in his body. Bit by bit it eroded her will. Yiqing Luo's little hand, which was on Zhou Xian's chest, gradually reduced in strength. Zhou Xian hugged her slender waist tighter and tighter, as though he wanted to melt her into his bones. Just as Yiqing Luo's consciousness started to blur and was about to sink into oblivion, her peripheral vision swept onto the youngsters who were standing by the side, staring at them in a daze. Yiqing Luo's face suddenly flushed red. Yiqing Luo didn't know where the energy came from as she pushed him away fiercely. Who wants your reward? This monster. If it was in private, it would be fine if the two of them were intimate. Kissing her in front of all these brothers, with so many pairs of eyes. How was she going to maintain her dignity in front of her brothers in the future? Yiqing Luo's face was so red that it looked like water was about to drip out. Qing Luo, it's all right, you guys carry on, just treat as if we don't exist. That's right. We're already used to being abused. You don't have to worry about us at all. If you want to kiss us, kiss us. If you want to hug us, hug us. The youngsters' ridiculing words came one after another. It was because of their ridicule that the atmosphere became relaxed once again. Today's exhaustion in the magic beast forest was swept away in the laughter. Hearing the youngsters' ridicule, Yiqing Luo's face turned red as she stared resentfully at Zhou Xian. But she saw him clutching his chest as his brows creased slightly. Chapter 628. Yiqing Luo's heart thumped. She suddenly thought of something as the smile on her lips disappeared. She took quick steps towards Zhou Xian as she stretched out her hand and tugged his collar. You come with me. As expected, with this tug she could clearly feel that his body was slightly stiff. Although Zhou Xian maintained his smile and gentle gaze. But that slight crease on his brows, Yiqing Luo saw it clearly. Go back to the mansion and have a good rest. We'll be returning to the academy tomorrow. Yiqing Luo turned her head to look at those youngsters who were sniggering behind her as she couldn't be bothered to explain to them. I'll be back later, no need to wait for me. It's all right if you don't come back, we all understand. It's the last day of the holiday, just accompany the Overlord well. Tomorrow Qing Luo still needs to go to the academy. Overlord, you'd better take it easy. Yiqing Luo. Damn it, indeed she had no way to establish her prestige. These youngsters weren't afraid of her. Little Nine. Yiqing Luo shouted and Little Nine's tail shook. The palm-sized fox instantly turned into a huge fox. Under the group of youngsters, I understand gazes. Yiqing Luo's face turned black as she grabbed Zhou Xian's hand and leapt onto Little Nine's back. Yiqing Luo's destination was that garden which Zhou Xian had given her the map of Death God Castle. The garden was still filled with flowers as hundreds of flowers bloomed. The fragrance in the air lingered around her nose. Standing in the middle of the flowers, Zhou Xian's eyes were filled with smiles. His curved peach blossom eyes were long and narrow with a demonic charm. Little Luo, the same location, the same you and me, are you hinting me to do what we did here that day? His tone was extremely joyous. That pitch-black obsidian-like eyes started to spread out as it started to thicken. Yiqing Luo wasn't like the past, revealing a lady's coquettish side because of Zhou Xian's teasing. Her expression was grave as she grabbed Zhou Xian's extended wrist and with a tilt, she pressed him into the flowers. Yiqing Luo sat on Zhou Xian's abdomen as her hands tore his clothes. Diamo Xian caught the two little hands which were pulling randomly as he placed it by his lips and planted a kiss on it. Little Luo, are you trying to force yourself? His tone was evil, and his long and narrow eyes exuded a devilish charm that was incomparably alluring. Yiqing Luo didn't say a word as her face was still sunken, struggling to tug at his clothes. Little Luo, Diamo Xian's voice abruptly turned heavier as he tightened his grip on her wrist. Stop fooling around. Why are you hiding? Yiqing Luo sneered as her charming eyes were filled with chilliness. I forced myself on you, shouldn't you feel happy? If it was during normal times, Diamo Xian would definitely turn from guest to host. Indeed, I'm very happy. Diamo Xian stared into her eyes and spoke in a serious tone. But Lil Luo, you're a lady and a lady's reputation is very important. I hope that the relationship between us can be placed on our wedding night and take it a step deeper. Yiqing Luo's sneer grew thicker. Since when did Diamo Xian know what reputation was? He had always done things his own way and did not care about what others thought of him. Talk about honor with her now? But I can't wait. Yiqing Luo's wrist nimbly flipped as she held Diamo Xian's hand, while her other hand speedily unbuttoned his clothes. A soft sigh which could not be heard came from the depths of Diamo Xian's throat. His clothes were open, revealing a muscular chest. But on that chest, there was an extremely glaring red, piercing Yiqing Luo's eyes. Chapter 629. Why didn't you tell me you were injured? Yiqing Luo stared at the red gauze, her fingers trembling as she touched it. However, before he could touch the gauze, he retracted his hand while trembling. Diamo Xian was injured. The high and mighty Dizun was injured. It's not a big injury. I'm fine. Diamo Xian's lips twitched slightly as he raised his hand to caress Yiqing Luo's fine black hair. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you would be worried. There was so much blood flowing from this wound. How could it be just a small injury? If it was just a small injury, a few pills could solve it. Why would there be so much blood? Suddenly Yiqing Luo recalled something. That map. The bloodstains on the map. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly trembled. Your injury? Was it when you went to Death God Castle to help me draw the map you got injured? That's right, the bloodstains on the map. Ever since Diamo Xian dashed into Death God Castle and brought her away from Zhu Wu Exen, she thought that she had guessed wrongly and assumed that Diamo Xian wasn't injured, hence she didn't probe further. If she hadn't noticed that something was wrong with his expression, she probably wouldn't have noticed it. A sense of vexation and guilt towards Diamo Xian arose from the bottom of her heart. She was not a qualified woman who could stay by Diamo Xian's side. She had never properly cared for Diamo Xian. It would only create one trouble after another for Diamo Xian. The more she thought, the tighter Yiqing Luo's heart became. There was a suffocating feeling in her throat. It was so uncomfortable that she couldn't even breathe smoothly. His nose felt sour as if something was about to gush out of his eyes. No. Diamo Xian answered without any hesitation, seeing through the guilt and thoughts in Yiqing Luo's eyes. His long arms stretched out and pulled Yiqing Luo into his embrace. Don't let your imagination run wild, I'm fine. His reply was straightforward and decisive, but it also indirectly proved that this injury was indeed the injury suffered in Death God Castle. For her, he had been injured, and for her, he had stayed by her side with his injuries. He had been pretending to be fine because he didn't want her to worry. Yiqing Luo's eyes gradually turned red. How could this man be so foolish? Feeling heartache? Diamo Xian's fingers slowly brushed past Yiqing Luo's cheeks. His fingertips paused at the corner of her eyes. If you can't bear to let me feel pain, kiss me and it won't hurt anymore. You. Even at this moment he could still act like a hooligan with a straight face. Yiqing Luo stared at Diamo Xian as she suddenly pushed his hand away. He took out some pills and gauze from the profound phoenix ring. You knew that I would be worried, yet you still hid the fact that you were injured. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips, her eyes filled with anger. You only let me know now, I'm even more worried, all right. She untied Diamo Xian's bloody gauze and threw it aside. Yiqing Luo then looked seriously at the wound on Diamo Xian's chest. It was a wound caused by a sharp weapon. The wound was not deep, but it happened to be close to the heart. Fortunately, Zhou Xian managed to evade in time and did not suffer any fatal injuries. Sharp weapons. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted as she was already certain that Zhou Xian's injury was caused when he was challenging the mechanisms in Death God Castle, when he triggered the mechanism. That was also such an intricate map. The route towards the exquisite pagoda was drawn out clearly, and every single mechanism was marked out clearly. If it wasn't for the fact that he had tried every single mechanism, how could it be drawn out so intricately? The contours of Zhou Xian's face were extremely gentle, and the gaze which he gazed at Yiqing Luo was filled with tenderness and pampering. One was bandaging his wound, while the other was staring at her tenderly and sweetly. The breeze blew as the flower petals danced. Pieces of flower petals were like dancing butterflies, lingering between the two of them. Chapter 630. After Yiqing Luo was done with the bandaging, she helped Zhou Xian to adjust his clothes properly and was about to speak. His line of sight met with a calm sleeping face. A man with outstanding looks no matter from which angle, was so handsome that it made one want to scream. Not knowing when he had fallen into a deep sleep. He was in a deep sleep. Even when she slowly moved her body and laid down beside him, he didn't wake up. Usually he was vigilant and could even sense a gust of wind. His injury was too serious. Yiqing Luo's heart ached as she pursed her lips tightly, as she half propped up her body and leaned beside him, staring at his face. The man in his sleep, his brows were tightly knitted into a bundle. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but stretched out her hand and swept past the wrinkles between his brows as she gently caressed it. Perhaps it was the softness of her fingers, perhaps it was the gentleness of her fingertips, perhaps it was the familiarity of her scent. That tightly knitted brows, slowly smoothed out. Lil Luo A soft murmur spilled out from his thin lips. Following that, her hand was accurately held in the palm of the man's hand. His fingers tightened as though he was holding the most precious thing in the world, tightly gripping it. Her heart suddenly increased the rate of its beating. Every time, it fiercely pounded against her throat. A gush of warmth slowly flowed from the bottom of her heart. She held that hand, slowly lowered her body and planted a kiss on his pale thin lips. Silly girl. A helpless sigh spilled out from between her lips that were so tightly pressed together. The next day Yiqing Luo was woken up by Zhou Xian. She rubbed her eyes, got up and was about to tear open Zhou Xian's clothes, wanting to take a look at his wound, and at the same time help him change his dressing, but was stopped by Zhou Xian. She should go to the academy. Yiqing Luo used both carrot and stick, but was unable to make Zhou Xian loosen his mouth, so she could only helplessly let him return to the palace to recuperate. She was going back to the academy today, so Zhou Xian need not worry about her leading the brothers on experience learning and getting injured. Sending Zhou Xian off on little Nine with her eyes, Yiqing Luo then returned to the mansion alone. The youngsters had long put on their academy uniforms as they lined up neatly in the garden. When they saw Yiqing Luo, they started to tease Yiqing Luo that she really didn't return for the entire night. But teasing was just teasing, they still understood Yiqing Luo's character very well. They were all clear that there was nothing between Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian. They were tactful enough not to intentionally ask where Zhou Xian had gone to. Amidst the laughter, everyone's serious mood from early in the morning also became relaxed. The 3 days of their holiday were spent in abundance. There were more than 10 youths who had successfully advanced a grade in these 3 days. As for those who did not advance, they could clearly feel that their physical fitness and overall strength had been greatly improved. This was the power that came from constantly fighting in dangerous situations. Qing Luo. Qiao Jin walked over with a space bag. Last night Shiju came back with a space bag in his mouth. It was filled with. He took out a black suit from his pocket. The flame-like cherry blossom embroidery on his right sleeve was extremely obvious. Wasn't it the uniform that the Blue Dragon mercenary group people wore yesterday? It must be Yiqing Luo's order for Shiju to retrieve these uniforms. Why did Yiqing Luo want these uniforms? Could it be that she wanted them to wash it before wearing it? Not to mention that these uniforms were tattered in this round's experience learning, ugly and smelly. Just these uniforms, if those Blue Dragon mercenary group members wore them, they wouldn't want to wear them anymore. Chapter 631. Xiao Jin didn't understand why as he carried his space bag and turned around, calling the youngsters to retrieve firewood from the kitchen as he directly set up a fire in the courtyard. We've given Blue Dragon Mercenary Group 54 sets. Yiqing Luo suddenly opened her mouth as she called out to Xiao Jin, "Before you burn it, count how many sets there are." These sets of clothes were indeed brought back by her. Even the group uniforms on those corpses who had died at the entrance of the magic beast forest. Yiqing Luo also asked Shiju to bring them back. She picked up the number of sets which Ji Tsongtian had worn away. Based on Ji Tsongtian's character, after he returned to his own camp and saw his disheveled self, then seeing those 30 over members returning, looking at the clothes they were wearing, he would recall the humiliation he had suffered in the magic beast forest. He would definitely be fuming with rage. She asked them to change out of their clothes and throw them out of sight and out of mind. Yiqing Luo wouldn't give them any chance to malign the world group. If one set of clothes was used, it could possibly cause a huge impact on the world group. Yiqing Luo wanted to eliminate all possibilities. Xiao Jin seemed to have understood something as he laughed out loudly. "You're the one who thought it through thoroughly. Burn all these clothes." Anyway, for the next 1 month, they wouldn't be able to wear the group uniform which belonged to them. They had plenty of time to customize a new batch of uniforms. The material and enchantment as well as the gravity belt had to be done meticulously. These were all things which Yan Shaoyi had discussed with the tailor's shop early on. They only needed to wait for a month before they could collect it from the tailor's shop. Not long later, the courtyard was lit up with flames as pieces of uniforms were thrown into the flames. A total of 54 pieces, no more and no less. Xiao Jin was burning as he told Yiqing Luo the numbers which he had counted. Yiqing Luo nodded as her heart, which was hanging in the balance, was finally put down. Lighting a fire in the courtyard so early in the morning, "Are you trying to burn down this huge mansion?" Suddenly an old but powerful voice was heard from the end of the courtyard. Following that, they saw an elderly dressed in a white robe walking over leisurely. It seemed as though he had just casually taken a step, but in a blink of an eye, he had already appeared in front of Yiqing Luo and the others. Expert. This was absolutely an expert. The youngsters' gazes were fixed on that elderly. Why did he look a little familiar? Yiqing Luo also had this feeling. He furrowed his brows and stared at the old man as he thought about it for a long time. In the end he said with uncertainty, "Are you holy pirate?" The old man raised his eyebrows and raised his hand to touch his grizzled hair. His eyes were bright. "After taking a bath, trimming my hair and changing my clothes, I'm so handsome that you can't recognize me?" It was really holy pirate. One must know that when he was rescued from Death God Castle's dungeon, he was a person who had not bathed for 10 years. His body was so dirty that he was almost covered in lice and bedbugs. How could she recognize a face that was completely black? After bringing God Thief back to the mansion, Yiqing Luo's entire mind was on the Dark Forces matters and the other missions, totally throwing him aside. He didn't expect Holy Pirate to take care of himself. God knows how much water he had to wash himself to be so clean. "Little girl, are you going to the academy? Go in peace. Leave the mansion and the world group to me." God Thief patted his chest. Why did Yiqing Luo feel that this old man was extremely unreliable? Chapter 632. Yiqing Luo felt that this old man was even more unreliable. However, he was still an old man that he had picked up. Moreover, he was once the #1 holy thief in the Nirvana realm. Even if he had not been able to stretch his muscles and bones for 10 years, he would be able to recover his skills in a few days. Even if he wasn't as powerful as before, he still had the ability to protect himself. As long as he could find the feeling he once had, the holy pirate of the past could return. After all, to become the #1 holy thief, one had to rely on absolute power. She could not bring Holy Pirate to the college. It would be a good idea to let Holy Pirate manage the mansion. What's more, the 30-odd members of the Blue Dragon group might come to report to him. Yiqing Luo still handed the manor over to God Thief to look after. As for the world group, Yiqing Luo didn't hand it over to God Thief, only instructing him repeatedly that if anyone were to bring the proof of the world group's seal over to them, then leave them behind. By the time they had arranged everything, it was already morning, which was around 7 or 8 in the morning. Yiqing Luo and the rest left the mansion. They didn't arrive at the academy together. Instead, they split up into several teams. If he were to stay by Yiqing Luo's side, he would probably become the center of attention again. It would also easily expose the devil class to the public. Yiqing Luo only brought Yi Fengyu along and walked openly through the academy's main entrance. Today was the first day of school, and there was a sea of people at the entrance of the academy, with an endless stream of horses and carriages. After Yiqing Luo and Yi Fengyu walked into the academy, they indeed became the center of attention. After all, what happened in the Three Springs sect on a holiday was too unbelievable. First, Yiqing Jian and Leng Fenghua's secret affair was exposed. It was exposed that they were in the Crown Prince Palace's garden in broad daylight. Moreover, Yiqing Qian was tormented till she was injured. Of course, if Yiqing Qian and Leng Fenghua were in love with each other, then it was perfectly justifiable. But unfortunately, Leng Fenghua was Yiqing Qian's seventh sister and also Yiqing Luo's fiancée. This was the loss of morals, this was the wrong view of the world. Yiqing Qian's deeds naturally affected Three Springs sect. Naturally it would implicate Yiqing Luo. It was like someone's father was a murderer. Everyone would subconsciously think that the whole family was a murderer when they saw that person's family. While everyone was sympathizing with Yiqing Luo at the same time, they felt that Yiqing Luo and Yiqing Jian were almost the same. After all, they were taught by the same father. But after that, news of Yiqing Luo clashing with the high profound class students at Heavenly Fortune Inn and finally being taken away by the Overlord's sacred beast, Nine-Tailed Fox, started to spread. While everyone was ridiculing Yiqing Qian, no one dared to bring Yiqing Luo along. It could be said that during the 3 days of vacation, the first miss and seventh miss of the Three Springs sect manor had become the talk of the town. You still have the guts to come to the academy? How shameless. Just as everyone was discussing in hushed voices, a sharp and ear-piercing voice rang out. Shortly after, a young girl walked over with her hands on her hips. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered, but the young lady was standing right in front of her and stretched out her hand to block her. This was the entrance to the academy, and there were many students coming and going. On seeing that someone dared to find fault with Yiqing Luo, they all stopped in their tracks to watch excitedly. Your eldest sister did such a shameless thing and was chased out of Three Springs City. She's setting off today, aren't you going to send her off? That young lady spoke in a weird tone. Shengguan Lioli. Chapter 633. You. Shengguan Lioli's face turned gloomy as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Such a huge matter had happened in Three Springs sect. How could Yiqing Luo still remain so calm? Yiqing Qian was her elder sister. The Three Springs sect was her backer. Now that there were rumors and slanderous discussions, she could still smile? Was she intentionally acting so calm, or was she too cold-blooded? Shengguan Lioli's heart seeped out a sliver of coldness. Yiqing Luo's gaze casually swept past the surrounding students as her charming eyes remained calm. Firstly, whatever Yiqing Qian did, she's shameless and it has nothing to do with me. Secondly, you're an unmarried young lady and in front of everyone, you dare to say such shameless things that Yiqing Luo had done. This is enough to prove that the thoughts in your mind are also dirty and shameless. When Yiqing Luo said the second point, Shengguan Lioli's steely green face instantly turned red. She clenched her teeth tightly as her 5 fingers clutched the corner of her clothes as her fingertips turned white. You're talking nonsense. I didn't. However, Shengguan Lioli's rebuttal didn't have much confidence. Her imposing manner had been completely suppressed by Yiqing Luo. The surrounding students' gazes towards Shengguan Lioli had also changed. Those pairs of unclear eyes looked at Shengguan Lioli as though her mind was really filled with dirty thoughts. There were even some male students who had already revealed a covetous gaze towards her. Shengguan Lioli had never suffered such humiliation before. Since when had she been stared at in such a blatant manner? Her entire face instantly flushed red from embarrassment and indignation. Her petite body was shaking non-stop as a pair of watery eyes stared resentfully at Yiqing Luo. But Yiqing Luo's expression remained calm as though she hadn't noticed Shengguan Lioli's vengeful gaze. Or perhaps she totally didn't put Shengguan Lioli in her eyes. Following that, Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled as she revealed an elegant smile. Thirdly, are you sure that Yiqing Qian will be chased out of Three Springs City today? What do you mean? Shangguan Liuli was startled, her beautiful eyes widening. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed slightly, her long and narrow eyes revealed a hint of ridicule. Regarding the second half of the rumor. I'm afraid the chess player did not tell you about it. The chess player? No matter how silly Shangguan Liuli was, she understood Yiqing Luo's meaning. It was being used by someone. Looking at Yiqing Luo's serene eyes, Shangguan Liuli's heart trembled as she suddenly thought of something as her face turned pale. Yesterday, when she had a flower tea gathering with the other ladies from the noble families, she overheard Lu Shuiyu and Lu Shuilon discussing the Three Springs sect. That was when he found out that something huge had happened to Three Springs sect's Yiqing Jian. The Lu sisters kept on shifting the topic to Yiqing Luo, talking about it in a few words. Yiqing Luo and Yiqing Jian were sisters, so naturally they received the same education. Yiqing Qian was shameless and Yiqing Luo must also be a shameless lady. Following that, they started on various topics, pointing out that Yiqing Luo was able to gain Dmo Xian's favor, was absolutely because of her foxy skills. Hearing these, Shangguan Liuli, who originally bore a grudge against Yiqing Luo, how could she possibly let go of this chance to ridicule Yiqing Luo? Her reputation was the most important thing for a lady. Because of this, Shangguan Liuli blocked the academy's entrance early in the morning, just to humiliate Yiqing Luo fiercely, ruining her reputation, making her the laughingstock of the entire Three Springs city. But Yiqing Luo's performance was too calm. So calm that Shangguan Liuli started to feel a little guilty. The second half of the rumor. We'll be able to see it soon. Yiqing Luo's gaze shot towards a direction not too far away, as a teasing smile flashed past her eyes. Chapter 634. As expected, at the instance when Yiqing Luo's words had just ended, she heard astonished cries coming from the huge crowd of people. Following that, a luxurious and exquisite carriage which was inlaid with sparkling crystals was seen slowly approaching. Wasn't the person in front of the carriage the current second prince Leng Fengying? Ever since Leng Fenghua fell from power, second prince's status had risen along with it. Numerous powerhouses and nobles all treated second prince as the crown prince's candidate, which was the future monarch. Even now, the crown prince's position had yet to be decided. But after all, in the entire West continent, only second prince had the ability to become the crown prince. Because of this, when these people saw Leng Fengying, all of them revealed a fawning smile as they went up to him in an attempt to attract his attention. Especially those elders who were sending their children to school, they all went up to greet him. Leng Fengying maintained his gentle and refined smile from start to finish. His handsome features looked innocent and harmless. If one didn't know him well just based on his looks, they would only think that he was a weak young man without the strength to truss a chicken, a soft-footed prawn that could be easily pinched. This kind of person easily made others feel close to him. This kind of person was even more welcomed by the imperial court's ministers. But to be able to grow up in the royal family, to be able to establish a batch of imperial court forces under Leng Fenghua's oppression, and also to pull in a portion of the external forces unknowingly. Finally, after Leng Fenghua met with a mishap, every step he took was so natural. Yiqing Luo didn't believe that this second prince was someone who was easy to deal with. Shangguan Liuli saw Leng Fengying at one glance as her eyes shone. It's second prince. That dainty face was an obvious bashfulness of a young lady meeting her sweetheart. She took quick steps forward and squeezed past those people who were flocking towards her as she pounced beside Leng Fengying. Second prince. Leng Fengying, who had just flipped down the horse, had a smile on his face, as though he was bathed in the spring breeze warming the earth. He passed the reins to the footboy and his arm was covered by a touch of warmth. Lowering his eyes, he saw Shangguan Liuli's bashful smile as she looked at him with a beaming face. Second prince, you haven't come to Shangguan residence to see me for a long time. Her tone was filled with tenderness. The onlookers looked at the two of them with dubious gazes. The second prince was so familiar with the daughter of the Shangguan family. From time to time he would go to the Shangguan residence to visit the daughter of the Shangguan housekeeper. Could it be that the second prince was going to marry into the Shangguan family? Fifth Miss Shangguan. Leng Fengying calmly retracted his hand as he silently pulled the distance between the two of them apart with a gentle smile. A few days ago I consulted Shangguan family head about the plan to control the flood in the North Village, and it has already started to be implemented. I've been busy with this matter and forgot to thank Shangguan family head. It's this prince's fault. In just a few words he had completely explained the ambiguous meaning in Shangguan Liuli's words. Everyone was enlightened. It turned out that the second prince went to the Shangguan residence to ask for a plan to control the flooding in Beituan. The second prince was indeed a benevolent prince who cared for the common people. As expected, he was a smart man. He was definitely not on the same level as Leng Fenghua. If this time round, even if she hadn't opened up an entrance for Leng Fengying, not too long in the future, Leng Fengying would use his own method to open up an entrance for himself. The moment the words about controlling the flood were explained, naturally no one would doubt the authenticity of these words. Because Shangguan family head was once an official in the imperial court, hence he was in charge of this aspect. Chapter 635. However, Shangguan Liuli, who was fixated on her Prince Charming, did not bring her brain with her. Or rather, Shangguan Liuli had no brains at all. She totally didn't understand the meaning in Leng Fengying's words, nor did she notice the distance that Leng Fengying had pulled apart from her. The second prince cares about the people. Father will not blame you. Saying that, Shangguan Liuli took another step forward as she stretched out her hand to hook onto Leng Fengying's arm once again. Second prince, even if the problem of controlling the flood is settled, you can also come to Shangguan residence to take a look at Liuli. Liuli really misses you. Hearing this sentence, Yiqing Luo almost coughed out. Should she say that Shangguan Liuli was stupid, or that she knew how to play with people's hearts? Shangguan Liuli would stop her at the academy's entrance and use Yiqing Qian's matter to ruin her reputation. She probably knew the importance of a good reputation to a woman. But unfortunately, the expression on Shangguan Liuli's face and the words she said revealed her admiration towards Leng Fengying, as well as her private ambiguous relationship with Leng Fenghua. She was certain that Leng Fengying would marry her. One must know that Shangguan Liuli's performance in front of everyone had totally tagged her as Leng Fengying. If Leng Fengying didn't marry her, Shangguan Liuli would probably be single for the rest of her life. After all, Leng Fengying's identity was there for all to see. It was very likely that he would be the future monarch. Who would dare to touch a woman that the monarch might have had an affair with? What Yiqing Luo was thinking was naturally what everyone was thinking. All of them discussed in low voices, trying to guess the relationship between Shangguan Liuli and the second prince. Right at this moment, the curtain of the luxurious carriage was pinched by a white finger, and then a sweet-sounding voice was heard. Fifth Miss Shangguan, in the heart of the second prince, there is only the West Continent and all the common people of the West Continent. Could it be that fifth Miss Shangguan hopes that the second prince will abandon the common people and go to the Shangguan residence to see you every day? His tone was filled with disdain and mockery. Ding ding dong dong, the sound of jewelry colliding against each other could be heard. Immediately, a woman dressed in luxurious clothing came out of the carriage. Leng Fengying immediately went over and stretched out his hand to support that woman. Shangguan Liuli's hand, which she tried to pull over, naturally missed. That young lady's little hand was placed on the back of Leng Fengying's hand as she slowly walked down the carriage. When everyone saw the woman's face clearly, they all cried out in disbelief. Yiqing Qian. Shangguan Liuli's eyes widened in shock. This woman was wearing a greenish-white academy uniform, and there were a few dazzling accessories on her waist. The most eye-catching thing about her was her face. Her makeup was exquisite, and her deliberately trimmed eyebrows were full of heroic spirit. Her seemingly simple yet graceful hair was pinned with a dazzling hairpin and hair ornament. Wasn't this the Yiqing Qian whom the monarch had assigned to King Ping, the one who was going to follow King Ping to the fief? At this time, wasn't she already in the carriage arranged by the monarch and leaving Three Springs City? She actually wore the academy uniform and appeared in the Heavenly Academy. Moreover, he had come together with the second prince. For so many years, the second prince had always kept a low profile and had a good character. He had never had any bad rumors with any woman. If one were to say that Shangguan Liuli's ambiguous words had stirred up gossip in everyone's hearts, most people still did not quite believe it. But the minute they saw Yiqing Qian, their gossipy hearts started to boil. Second prince and Yiqing Qian? Who is Yiqing Qian? Second prince's future sister-in-law. She had a relationship with second prince's eldest brother. How did second prince get involved with Xianxia? And from the looks of this situation, from second prince's attitude towards Xianxia, it was obviously. Chapter 636. Shangguan Liuli was stunned. Shangguan Liuli was stunned. Shangguan Liuli was stunned. She wanted to ask. The male god in her heart holding the hand of the woman whom she despised from the bottom of her heart, walking arrogantly in front of her, how would she feel? Shangguan Liuli only knew that a chord in her brain had snapped. Suddenly it exploded, leaving only a blank space. Her body had already started to move according to Shangguan Liuli's most genuine thoughts. She speedily walked in front of Leng Fengying, blocking his path as she stared fiercely at Xianxia. Second prince, what's your relationship with this slut? The surrounding crowd stuck their heads out, expressing that they were extremely curious about the answer to this question. Fifth Miss Shangguan, what relationship I have with second prince is none of your business. Xianxia's brows rose as her lips curled into a contemptuous smile. A good dog doesn't block the way. Fifth Miss Shangguan, please move aside. You actually dare to call me a dog? Shangguan Liuli's cheeks flushed red, especially that smirk of ridicule in Xianxia's eyes, pierced deeply into her eyes. Shangguan Liuli bit her lower lip tightly, suppressing the surging anger in her chest as she stubbornly looked at Leng Fengying. Second prince. Don't be cheated by this vixen, she's simply a shameless slut. With a bam, Shangguan Liuli's petite body was sent flying. Xianxia retracted her hand as that usually gentle white lotus face was filled with arrogance, an unconcealable arrogance. Shangguan Liuli, don't be so shameless when I give you face. Who gave you the right to insult me? This action made the surrounding students gasp in shock. In their eyes, Xianxia was a pure white lotus. Xianxia was the #1 beauty in Three Springs City. She was beautiful, had high innate talent, had a gentle character and treated others with courtesy. In other words, she was a big white lotus who gathered all the advantages. This was the first time they saw Xianxia revealing such an arrogant and haughty expression. This was also the first time they saw Xianxia slapping someone without any explanation. Yiqing Luo was also slightly shocked. She squinted her eyes as she stared at Xianxia with interest. It turned out that her big sister, who was like a white lotus, had completely darkened after experiencing this incident. But that's right. His reputation and whatnot were already ruined. No matter how Xianxia acted or how she acted as a white lotus, the people of Three Springs City wouldn't believe it, and neither would the people of the West Continent. Stealing his sister's fiancé was the same as stealing his sister's fiancé. Rolling around with his sister's fiancé was the same as rolling around with his sister's fiancé. Everything was the truth. There was no way to refute that. It would be better to just turn evil and not bother to wear that hypocritical mask anymore. In any case, he would be scolded for pretending to be innocent. Even if he turned dark, he would still be scolded. Darkening, at least he felt good in his heart and he didn't have to be so aggrieved. He had to admit that Xianxia's move was extremely good. As though noticing Yiqing Luo's gaze, that arrogant lady's eyebrows rose as her vision shot towards Yiqing Luo. Then a murderous look flashed across her eyes. She lifted her hand and wiped it across her neck. Her fiery red lips curled into an arrogant, cold smile. Her lips wriggled as she spat out a few words soundlessly. You just wait and see. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change as she didn't respond to Xianxia's provocation. From the time she heard the high profound class discussing about Xianxia and second princes hooking up, Yiqing Luo guessed that this big sister White Lotus was like a weed with tenacious vitality. Xianxia was still alive. As long as Xianxia was given a chance to make a comeback, she would disregard everything to get this chance. Chapter 637. But what made Yiqing Luo curious was, what conditions did Xianxia set out to attract Leng Fengying's wild ambition? He didn't care about Xianxia's current disreputable reputation, which would affect his current status, and personally sent Xianxia to the academy to build up her reputation. With second prince as her backing, everyone's discussions and ridicule towards Xianxia were more or less restrained. Shangguan Liuli was beaten into a daze. She sat on the ground in a daze, clutching her swollen red cheek as blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth. Xianxia actually hit him? Xianxia, that slut, actually dared to hit her? Shangguan Liuli was infuriated. With a sudden sound, she sprang up from the ground as she raised her hand and sent a slap towards Xianxia's face. You slutty vixen, I asked you to hit me, I asked you to use your unrestrained nature to seduce second prince. Shangguan Liuli had always been arrogant and willful. Since young she had only suffered a loss in Yiqing Luo's hands. At this moment Yiqing also dared to press on top of her. Especially Yiqing, who had snatched away the male god in her heart. Shangguan Liuli instantly shifted her hatred towards Yiqing Luo onto Yiqing. But before she could pounce on her, a figure dashed out from the crowd, blocking Shangguan Liuli's way. Following that she heard an apologetic voice. Second Prince, eldest Miss Yi, my sister and I had a small conflict today, and I've been suppressing my anger in my heart, so I acted up for no reason, disturbing Second Prince and eldest Miss Yi. It's my sister's fault, I apologize on behalf of my sister. Third brother. Shangguan Liuli's eyes widened as she stared in disbelief at the man who was tugging her. Shangguan Fengyi's hand, at a place where no one could see, pinched Shangguan Liuli's flesh fiercely. Shangguan Liuli cried out in pain as her eyes instantly turned red, as she covered her face aggrievedly, shaking off Shangguan Fengyi's hand. Stomping her feet, she turned around and ran away crying. Second Prince, eldest Miss Yi, I'm sorry. Shangguan Fengyi bowed his body slightly. No worries. Leng Fengying smiled faintly as he shook his head. Perhaps some of this prince's actions had caused 5th Miss Shangguan to misunderstand. I'm indebted to 5th Miss Shangguan's misplaced love. Shangguan Fengyi's face darkened. Leng Fengying saying these words in front of everyone totally destroyed Shangguan Liuli's reputation. Shangguan Liuli admired the second prince and was rejected by him? Once the news got out, would Shangguan Liuli still be able to find a husband? Which young master would dare to accept her? If Leng Fengying hadn't said these words, Shangguan Fengyi could still use other words to smooth over Shangguan Liuli's earlier actions. But Leng Fengying totally didn't give Shangguan Liuli this chance. Was he standing up for Yiqing? Shangguan Fengyi was overwhelmed with shock as he subconsciously took a look at Yiqing. But he discovered that Yiqing's pretty face was covered with a layer of arrogant frost, looking at him with a smile that didn't look like a smile. That gaze was filled with a strong warning. He was totally different from the usual Yiqing. It was as though he was a completely different person. Shangguan Fengyi lowered his head and looked away. He murmured, "Then I shall not disturb second prince and eldest Miss Yi." Saying that, he chased after the direction which Shangguan Liuli ran towards. Leng Fengying and Yiqing held hands as he sent Yiqing into the academy before he stopped in his tracks. Standing at the entrance of the academy, he remained silent for a moment before he turned around and returned to the carriage. This action seemed as though he treasured Yiqing a lot. But in Yiqing Luo's eyes, she only felt that Leng Fengying was completing a mission. A mission which he had discussed with Yiqing. There were no feelings between them. Chapter 638. Standing by the side of the carriage, Leng Fengying didn't directly mount the horse. Instead, he stood on the spot and remained silent for quite a while, as his peripheral vision shot towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Then he leaped onto his horse and led a group of people away in a grandiose manner. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed as she was slightly astonished. Elder sister, eldest sister she. Yi Fengyu frowned as he thought of Yiqing just now and couldn't help but have goosebumps. That kind of Yiqing was totally different from the Yiqing in his memories. Don't bother about her. Yiqing Luo ruffled Yi Fengyu's hair. Next time you see her, just avoid her. Now she doesn't even want to wear that gentle mask anymore. She won't be soft-hearted towards you. Yi Fengyu was stunned. Alright, go in. Don't forget to report to Teacher Guiyu. Yiqing Luo patted his face, grabbed his shoulder and pushed him towards the school gate. Teacher Guiyu, you should be very interested in our 3 days of experience learning. Sister, what are you going to do? Kids shouldn't ask too many questions. After sending Yi Fengyu away, Yiqing Luo didn't enter the academy but blended into the crowd and quietly disappeared from everyone's sight. Everyone's attention was focused on Yiqing and Leng Fengying, so naturally no one noticed Yiqing Luo's disappearance. Yiqing Luo arrived at the back alley of the Heavenly Academy with ease. This was the place where she barged into when she first came to the Heavenly Academy. It was also here that he was assassinated by the triplets of Godless Island, the three evils of Godless. At this moment the back alley was still silent, without the slightest sign of life. Yiqing Luo stopped at a dead end as her voice was chilly. "Aren't you looking for me? Why are you hiding? Are you worried about being discovered?" As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of light footsteps came from behind him. Following that she heard Leng Fengying's gentle voice ringing behind her. "Yes, 7th Mississippi. What's the matter, Second Prince?" Yiqing Luo raised her brows and turned around with a playful smile. Earlier, before Leng Fengying mounted the horse and left, he specially took a look at her as his lips moved slightly. Yiqing Luo could read lips. He asked her to meet him in the back alley. Coincidentally, she also had something which she wanted to discuss with Leng Fengying. After all, the relationship between them could be considered to be a cooperative one. 7th young mistress of the night is so intelligent. You should understand why I am looking for you. Leng Fengying was indeed an intelligent man, and right now when he was conversing with Yiqing Luo, he had automatically changed his self-address to I, indicating his respect towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo covered her mouth and chuckled, her eyes were glowing. Second Prince didn't say anything. No matter how intelligent I am, I'm not a roundworm in his stomach. Don't you have anything to ask me? Of course there is, but... Yiqing Luo dragged her words. Will you answer truthfully? Yes. Leng Fengying spat out a word without any hesitation. I owe you a favor, so I will answer whatever questions you ask me. That pair of gentle eyes stared straight at Yiqing Luo, filled with sincerity. As though he was expressing his determination to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes in interest. To tell the truth, before this she totally had no impression of Leng Fengying at all. It was just that when he was dealing with Leng Fenghua, he deliberately investigated whether there was anyone in the current imperial family who could be on par with Leng Fenghua. From the investigations, Leng Fengying was an extremely mediocre prince. His innate talent was average and his deeds were average. Especially under Leng Fenghua's intentional oppression, his entire person could be described as ordinary. As for her, choosing Leng Fengying was based on her direct observation towards the imperial family. Chapter 639. From what Yiqing Luo thought, Leng Fengying was much more dangerous than Leng Fenghua. The facts had proven that Yiqing Luo had guessed correctly based on her own view of the royal family. He had taken the right step. However, would their cooperation be affected because of Yiqing Qian? Yiqing Luo crossed her arms over her chest. What's the relationship between you and Yiqing Qian? As you can see, Leng Fengying replied without any hesitation. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched. You call this an answer? What did he mean by the relationship she saw? In other words, no matter what she thought, the relationship was there and he wouldn't deny it or admit it. You call that a truthful answer? Leng Fengying smiled but didn't say a word. Yiqing Luo's eyes twitched as she turned around and left. 7th Miss Yi. Leng Fengying hurriedly blocked Yiqing Luo's way. Although his facial features were not outstanding, there was a unique charm to his gentle face. I don't mean it in that way, Leng Fengying explained. A cold glint flashed past Yiqing Luo's eyes as she squinted at the arm in front of her. If you don't have the sincerity to talk to me, then don't waste my time. I'm not that free to play riddles with you here. Leng Fengying was indeed a talent and his ability was much stronger than Leng Fenghua's. However, for so many years under the oppression of Leng Fenghua, he was still able to form his own faction, and even after Leng Fenghua fell from power, he was able to obtain a voice of support. This also resulted in his habit of being cautious and secretive. And this point towards Yiqing Luo, who liked to be clean and decisive, it was extremely irritating. Since she had chosen to cooperate with Leng Fengying, she had already paved a path for Leng Fengying to quickly destroy Leng Fenghua. He would no longer cooperate with anyone else. Furthermore, in the entire imperial family, who else but him could threaten his position? There was no doubt that the position of crown prince belonged to Leng Fengying. From Yiqing Luo's point of view, since they were working together, then they should choose to trust each other and work together happily. Whereas until now, Leng Fengying still harbored suspicions towards her. Since they didn't trust each other, there was no need to continue their partnership. Seventh young mistress of the night, of course I sincerely want to talk to you. Lung Fengying gave a gentle smile as he put down the arm which was placed horizontally in front of Yiqing Luo. I believe with 7th Miss Ye's intelligence, you will definitely be able to tell that Yiqing Qian and I are not that kind of relationship. Reason. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered to beat around the bush with him. Lung Fengying's eyelids drooped down as he shook his head. Forgive me for not being able to say. Can't say. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as her vision swept past his face. Because you want Yiqing Qian's power? Saying that, Lung Fengying looked at Yiqing Luo in astonishment as though he was in shock. How did she know? As expected, Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk slightly as her expression turned grave. That's right, who wouldn't want Yiqing Qian's power? She was only a teenage girl, but she had already reached the Earth Profound realm. If she trained well with her talent, she would definitely become a rare genius girl in the world. Who didn't want to keep her for their own use? Especially, Yiqing Qian still had the dark forces as her backing. Thinking about it. Hence, Yiqing Qian made Lung Fengying sign a soul contract with the dark forces, using the power as bait, making use of Lung Fengying's identity and status to give herself a chance to make a comeback. The current Lung Fengying had just chased Lung Fenghua off the crown prince's position. He urgently needed to do something or use his own ability to prove that he was the only candidate for the crown prince's position. In this era where martial arts were revered and the strong were revered. Chapter 640. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh. The curve of her lips was extremely enchanting. Gu Pan's charming eyes raised slightly, outlining a long and narrow evil charm. Second prince, let me give you a piece of advice. If you don't cultivate your strength on your own, even if you forcefully use it on yourself, it won't be yours in the end. Lung Fengying was stunned as a glint circulated in his eyes. He had totally not expected that before he even said anything, Yiqing Luo had already guessed everything. Don't use this kind of judging gaze to size me up, I'm not your enemy. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. Of course, we will not be in a cooperative relationship. Lung Fengying was just about to open his mouth when he stopped. 7th young Miss Yi, aren't we? The moment you got together with Yiqing Qian, the cooperation between us had ended. Yiqing Luo said straightforwardly. Of course, you don't need to have any psychological burden. I will help you not because I want to. Yes, at the end of the day they were just using each other. Lung Fenghua wanted to harm her. Yiqing Qian wanted to return the scheme to her. She wanted to retaliate, and it wasn't as simple as killing the other party. Instead, it was to crush the opponent's mentality and destroy the things that they cared about bit by bit. As for Lung Fengying, he was just a chess piece to destroy Lung Fenghua. 7th young Miss Yi. Lung Fengying's gentle brows creased slightly as his tone turned anxious. We can have a good talk. He was an intelligent man and naturally understood that if he became enemies with Yiqing Luo, it would mean adding another strong opponent. His current foundation wasn't stable, and since Yiqing Luo was able to destroy Lung Fenghua, she naturally had the ability to destroy him. Lung Fengying had also heard from Yiqing Qian that Yiqing Luo was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. It was definitely unwise to make an enemy out of her at this critical juncture. Thinking of this, Lung Fengying's tone turned even gentler. 7th young Miss Kindness towards me 2 days ago, I have always remembered it in my heart. 7th young Miss, please give me a chance to repay you. All right. Not waiting for him to finish, Yiqing Luo had already interrupted him. Let Yiqing Qian marry Lung Fenghua and leave Three Springs City together. Lung Fengying's eyes dimmed slightly as his fingers clenched into a fist. After a long while he slowly shook his head. 7th Miss, other than this I can agree to any other request. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly as she turned around and walked towards the front of the alley. Hearing the footsteps of the man behind her, she raised her hand and waved. Apart from this request, I don't need your help. The footsteps stopped. Yiqing Luo continued. You can be assured that I have no interest in your royal family's matters. You can do whatever you like, but... She glanced sideways and her peripheral vision fell onto Lung Fengying as a cold intent flashed past her narrow and long eyes. If your war implicates my people, then don't blame me for not showing any mercy. Lung Fengying was stunned on the spot. That gaze, even though it was only a glance, caused one to shudder with fear. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. This was what Yiqing Luo conveyed to him. As long as he or Yiqing Qian didn't offend her, she didn't have the time to go against them. This woman's personality was really hard to fathom. Leng Fengying clenched his fists tightly as he watched Yiqing Luo leave, before he silently left the back alley. After Yiqing Luo entered the academy, she didn't return to the devil class but headed straight towards the library pavilion. Today was the day when the students returned to the academy, and quite a number of students headed over to the library pavilion to borrow books to read, or to verify the homework which the masters had assigned for the past 3 days. They were all sighing silently in their hearts. Surely this Yiqing Qian couldn't have been driven crazy because her reputation was in a mess? Yiqing Qian was the White Lotus representative in everyone's hearts. His ferocious appearance was really hard to accept for a moment. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she stared at the lady who was walking nearer to her, as her slightly creased brows rose. Elder sister is really free. The closer Yiqing Qian got, the clearer Yiqing Luo could see the faint black qi in her eyes. The dark force's energy was in Yiqing Qian's body. However, what made Yiqing Luo curious was this dark force's power didn't seem to be the kind that controlled Yiqing Ling and Yuqi Peng. But it was obediently attached to Yiqing Qian's body. Instead, it seemed like it had already merged into one with Yiqing Qian, becoming a power that Yiqing Qian could use. Suddenly, Yiqing Luo recalled the question she asked Leng Fengying. Yiqing Qian used the dark force and Leng Fengying as bait to cooperate with him. Chapter 642. Yiqing Qian's relationship with the dark forces. Not simple. According to the rules of the library pavilion, other than the students from the high profound class and the class of gods who can enter the second level of the library pavilion, the students from the middle and lower classes can only read books on the first level of the library pavilion. Students like you, devil class, you don't even have the qualifications to enter the library pavilion. Yiqing Jian raised her chin in disdain, as she spat out the rules of the library pavilion word by word. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as her long eyelashes fluttered, looking extremely innocent. But I've already been to the second story of the library pavilion twice. Yiqing Qian's face instantly turned black. Indeed, Yiqing Luo had been to the second story of the library pavilion twice. However, that did not mean that she was qualified to go up to the second floor of the library pavilion. Instead, he was punished by the instructor to tidy up the library. But he had not expected this punishment to become Yiqing Luo's capital to flaunt her prowess. Yiqing Qian was so infuriated that the black qi in her eyes grew thicker, as her eyes were filled with hatred. Except for special circumstances, before you have obtained the qualification to enter the second story of the library pavilion, you barging in without permission is against the rules of the library pavilion. Towards Yiqing Luo, how could she not hate her? She was obviously the #1 beauty of the Three Springs city, the hope of the Three Springs sect, the goddess of the entire academy. Now when everyone saw her, they would look at her with disdain. Behind her back, they kept pointing fingers at her and mocking her for being a slut. They mocked her for selling her body and herself in order to climb to a higher position. Obviously it was Leng Fenghua who seduced her first. It was Leng Fenghua who lied to her that he would marry her, give her the position of crown princess, and make her the future emperor-empress. Obviously, from the beginning to the end, she only had Leng Fenghua as a man. She and Leng Fengying were innocent. However, no one would believe her. In fact, as long as a man spoke to her or greeted her, people would stare at them and gossip about their illicit relationship. This feeling, who could stand it? Although the days when she wore a mask in the past were very tiring, however, no matter how tired he was in the past, his heart was content. She liked the feeling of people looking at her with admiration in their eyes. He liked the feeling of standing at the top of the clouds and being praised. But now she had fallen from the clouds into the abyss of hell and could no longer climb back up. He was back to being himself and no longer had to wear a mask. But she wasn't happy. She couldn't accept it. There was a feeling of emptiness in his chest. All these were thanks to Yiqing Luo. It was Yiqing Luo who caused her to become like this. The more he thought about it, the more resentment he felt in his heart. Qian couldn't help but raise her hand, as she fiercely slapped Luo's calm and composed face. She wanted to destroy the face, the owner of the face. He wanted to dismember Luo into 1,000 pieces, so that she would never be able to reincarnate. That intense hatred was naturally felt by Luo. Her eyes overflowed with ridicule as she looked at Qian's venomous eyes. When she raised her palm to swing towards her face, she directly raised her leg and kicked towards Qian's chest. Qian's action was totally subconscious, and by the time she reacted and tried to avoid it, a sharp pain had already spread from her chest and she was like a kite with a broken string, flying out directly. Her eyes were filled with shock. When she landed on the ground, she quickly slammed her palm against the ground. His body spun a few times in the air before he stabilized his footing. Chapter 643. The library pavilion's rules are set by you? Just because you say I don't have the right to enter doesn't mean I can't enter? Are you from the faculty council? Vice President Lu Dai didn't even say a word. What are you butting in for? Question after question, like a bombardment, smashed towards Qian with a pitter-patter. Luo's eyes were filled with ridicule as her lips curled upwards. You can't go up to the second story of the library pavilion, but I can go up without any obstruction. Do you believe me? Qian clutched her chest. Luo's kick was totally without any reservation. Yes. As a high profound class student, even if Qian wanted to go up to the second story of the library pavilion, she had to get the approval from the library pavilion's management and obtain the time certificate to enter the second story. She was in so much pain that her brows creased into a bundle. Her features were sinister as she stared fiercely at Luo. I'd like to see how you're going to go up to the second story of the library pavilion. To go up to the second story of the library pavilion, one must get the library pavilion's management to open the door. Luo, who didn't have the right to enter, how would the manager possibly open the door for her? Want to make a bet? Luo's brows rose as she looked at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Qian's pupils contracted slightly. Seeing Luo's expression, her heart suddenly stopped, somehow feeling that there seemed to be a trap. Don't dare. Luo sarcastically tugged her lips. If you don't have the guts, then don't be a road-blocking dog. Saying that, Luo turned around and walked towards the second story of the library pavilion. That sarcastic smile pricked Qian's eyes. Her slender fingers clutched her sleeves tightly as her pretty face contorted. All right. I'll bet with you. She absolutely didn't believe that Luo had the right to enter the second story of the library pavilion. Who didn't know how to put on an act? Luo, who had already stepped onto the second story's staircase, had a flash of astonishment in her eyes as she quickly regained her original calmness and insolence. This astonishment was coincidentally caught by Qian. Indeed, she was putting on an act. She became even more complacent. Say, how do you want to bet? This is the academy. If you want to bet money or something else, it will affect the atmosphere of the academy. Why don't you bet on something else? A clear voice came from the crowd. A slender figure walked out from the mantra book area. Xiaoyu. Luo's eyes lit up. Ever since the dormitory was destroyed, she and Lu Xiaoyu rarely met. Lu Xiaoyu swaggered over with a palm-sized pastry in her hand. As she chewed on the pastry, she said mischievously, if Luo enters the second story, then you will kneel down in front of everyone and crawl all the way to the door, shouting, "Good sister, I'm wrong," 3 times. How about that? As soon as he said this, all the students in the library drew in a breath of cold air. This gamble, it was even more exciting than gambling. He was gambling with his pride. Xiaoyu, wouldn't this bet date be too? Luo's eyes widened as she quickly walked down the stairs and grabbed Lu Xiaoyu's arm. I'm fine. Lu Xiaoyu waved her hand with a calm face. I've just returned to the academy, so I need something happy to stimulate the students' passion for learning. Just treat it as entertainment. But, I'll bet. Not waiting for Luo to finish stammering, Jian had already opened her mouth. At this moment, Jian had already determined that Luo was putting on an act. She wanted Luo to kneel down in front of everyone, and wanted Luo to crawl out of the library pavilion's entrance. She wanted Luo to not be able to lift her head up in front of everyone. Bet. 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 The surrounding students saw Yi Qingjian nodding her head without any hesitation, and this bet was so interesting, so they were all interested. All of them cheered with their arms raised. Chapter 644. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly, full of sarcasm. I'm thinking for eldest sister's reputation. Her words paused as though she had misspoken as she covered her pink lips and shook her head. I forgot, eldest sister has no reputation to speak of. These words pierced Yi Qingqian's smile as it froze on her face. Her fingers clenched tightly as the veins on her forehead popped out. Stop the nonsense. Are you going to bet or not? Eldest sister is already embarrassed enough, are you sure you want to bet so much? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she sneered at her. Moreover, whether I go up to the second story of the library pavilion or not, has nothing to do with eldest sister. Yi Qingqian was pierced by Yiqing Luo's words, as her pretty face was covered with a layer of frost. The black qi in the depths of her beautiful eyes formed a whirlpool. Student Yiqing Luo, this is the academy. I cannot protect you in front of so many students just because you're my sister. Yi Qingqian clenched her teeth fiercely. If you can go up without any obstruction, I will kneel down right now. Looked like Yi Qingqian had hardened her heart to embarrass Yiqing Luo in public. Yiqing Luo curled her lips in disdain as she scoffed. Thinking of using the same method to ruin her reputation. Was it that easy? Even if her reputation was in a mess and her temperament had a huge change, but this shell was still this shell. Her intelligence was still low. How many times had she suffered losses in her hands? But she still didn't know how to restrain herself. Not a single bit of improvement. Yiqing Luo didn't say anything more, as her lips hung an enchanting smile, as she turned around and walked up the stairs. All the students in the library pavilion had their gazes concentrated on Yiqing Luo. Seeing her step by step, she walked up to the entrance of the second story of the library pavilion and stopped. The door of the second story of the library pavilion was carved with numerous totems of books, and on the door handle hung a fist-sized lock. There were only 2 keys to open this lock. One was in the director's hand, and the other was in the library pavilion administrator's hand. Yi Qingqian's face was filled with an unconcealable smile. Without the key, how would Yiqing Luo enter? By the time the administrator discovered that all the students had created such a ruckus in the library pavilion, he would definitely throw the troublemaker, Yiqing Luo, out directly. By then Yiqing Luo would kneel down and complete the bet. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. Teacher, help me open the door to the second story. Yiqing Luo stood in front of the door and shouted. Teacher? Who was it? The students looked left and right, puzzled. The meaning of teacher was different from teacher. The headmaster was the one who taught and guided the students. As for teachers, it was to express the respect a student had for a certain elder in the academy. Who was this teacher he was referring to? Just as everyone was guessing, they heard a deafening voice that sounded like a great bell coming from afar. He's here, he's here. Soon after, the librarian of the book collection pavilion walked over with big strides. That fierce face didn't have the usual irritation and anger. A manager. The students were astonished as they looked at the administrator, who had always had a bad temper and was always shouting at the slightest thing, walking towards Yiqing Luo. Then the librarian smiled. Student Yi, you came to the library to study as soon as you arrived. What a diligent child. What the hell? This was definitely AF * king hallucination. The fierce and hot-tempered administrator actually smiled at Yiqing Luo. Yi Qingqian's face instantly turned pale. She staggered backwards a few steps, but luckily she was supported by the high profound class students in time. She had been tricked by Yiqing Luo again? The administrator's attitude was obviously on Yiqing Luo's side. Chapter 645. Abuse of Authority? The administrator's gaze shifted onto Yi Qingqian's face as his expression turned ferocious. Great. Since you say I'm abusing my authority, then report me to the director right now. Yi Qingqian's ears were ringing from the booming voice. Her petite figure swayed slightly as she looked at Yiqing Luo and shook her head in disbelief. Impossible, she's a waste-class devil-class student. She has no right to go to the second story of the library pavilion. Whether I have the right or not, it's not up to you to decide. The administrator took out the key and directly opened the door to the second story. It's because there are meddlesome students like you, disturbing the other students from reading and discussing their assignments. After the door to the second story opened, the administrator's tall and sturdy body moved to one side as he smiled at Yiqing Luo. Student Yi, go in first, don't let. He paused and gave a silly laugh. Don't wait too long. Yiqing Luo's motive for going to the second story of the library pavilion was definitely to meet Ghost Doctor. The administrator naturally didn't dare to stop her. Even if this matter reached the director, he wasn't afraid. Ghost Doctor had personally acknowledged her as his disciple, so the director couldn't stop her. Ever since he knew that Yiqing Luo was Ghost Doctor's disciple, the administrator became more and more respectful towards her. Of course, there was also his fondness towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo had once saved his pair of eyes from Ghost Doctor's hands. Yiqing Luo was the first person who called him teacher. In Heavenly Academy he had been managing the library pavilion for decades. Wasn't it his fondness towards the academy and his fondness towards these books which persisted till now? In his eyes, the students in the academy who entered the library pavilion were considered as his students. However, the Heavenly Academy had gathered elite students from all over the world. All of them had distinguished statuses and had been looking down on others since young. When they arrived at the library pavilion, no one paid any attention to him, only treating him as a librarian. It was to the extent that later on, the students who came to the library pavilion didn't pay any attention to him. As time went by, the administrator began to put on a ferocious expression to intimidate the students. But in this way he had completely lost the students' respect towards him. Thank you, teacher administrator. Yiqing Luo's smile turned gentle. She knew that right from the start the administrator had noticed the conflict here. The administrator was probably here to dissuade them. After that he heard her proposing a bet with Yiqing Qian and understood what she meant, so he purposely didn't appear. The administrator waved his hand. It's nothing. The two of them exchanged words one after another, making the surrounding students keep on guessing the relationship between Yiqing Luo and the administrator. As for Yiqing Qian, her face was so pale that she almost collapsed onto the ground. The high profound class students who were supporting her let go of her upon seeing the administrator's appearance and fled from the crowd's attention. Elder sister, I'm still waiting for you to kneel down, crawl to the library pavilion's entrance and shout, I'm wrong 3 times to me. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms in front of her chest as she gave an amused smile. This slut. Sure enough, he was plotting against her. Yiqing Qian stared resentfully at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo and the administrator knew each other, so she could make the administrator abuse his power. But Yiqing Luo intentionally revealed that kind of expression to confuse her judgment. How could she possibly kneel? How could she possibly admit her mistake to Yiqing Luo? Yo, elder sister, are you thinking of going back on your words? Yiqing Luo's eyes blinked as her index finger pressed against her pink lips as she nodded thoughtfully. I had long guessed that elder sister would not admit it. After all, elder sister is used to lying. Chapter 646. The students all nodded their heads in agreement. Yiqing Qian was able to snatch her sister's fiancé and even seduce her sister's fiancé's biological brother. What face did she have? Overbearingly wanting to bet with Yiqing Luo. After she lost, she refused to admit to it and wanted to go back on her words. She was really invincible when one was shameless. The students' faces were filled with disdain as they looked at Yiqing Qian with disgust. This kind of improper 3 views matter, even if it was in the 21st century, was something that the world would not tolerate. Moreover, it was in Nirvana realm. Even if Yiqing Qian had Ling Fengying's protection, it was unable to change other people's impression of her. Disgust was disgust. Disgust was disgust. They seemed to have forgotten that the one who suggested the bet was Yiqing Luo. This point no one would care about. How can we forget about it? Hasn't Master always taught us to be honest and trustworthy? Especially student Yiqing Qian is a high profound class student and is the academy's role model. If student Yiqing Qian were to take the lead and teach the other students how to be sore losers and turn hostile. Lu Xiaoyu gave a light humph as she used Yiqing Qian's original words to counter. If this were to spread to the faculty council or the director's ears, student Yiqing Qian would probably have to bear the responsibility. That's right. As a high profound class student, every action and action represents the high profound class, represents the heavenly academy. We low profound class students like to imitate the high profound class students' mannerisms and actions. Student Xianxia is teaching us what's called turning hostile and turning hostile. When I saw Xianxia coming to the academy, I only thought that her face was extremely thick, but now I know that she totally has no face at all. One by one the students chimed in passionately. Xianxia's beautiful eyes turned gloomy as she clenched her fists so tightly that her fingers turned white and green veins popped out on her forehead. Lu Shuelon heard the students around her shouting intensely as her expression turned gloomy. Xianxia, you're her elder sister, so there's no need to kneel down. Just apologize to her. If these students were to continue making a ruckus, the high profound class's reputation would be completely ruined. Shut up. Xianxia glanced at Lu Shuelon coldly as her eyes turned chilly. Lu Shuelon was shocked as a flash of astonishment flashed past her eyes. Xianxia dared to shout at her? Ever since she became the substitute vice president of the faculty council, no one dared to speak loudly to her. Lu Shuelon's face instantly turned pale. Xianxia. Say that again. Xianxia's sinister facial features revealed a chilly intent as her murderous intent was revealed. Flicking her sleeves, she turned around and headed towards the direction of the library pavilion's entrance. She walked very fast, wanting to escape from this place where everyone was making fun of her and mocking her. Lu Shuelon was thoroughly enraged. Xianxia's arrogance was simply a slap on her face. If she didn't teach Xianxia a harsh lesson in front of everyone, wouldn't others think that she, the acting vice president, was easy to bully? Xianxia, you dare to insult the staff of the faculty council. Now I will represent the faculty council to bring you to the faculty council and let you recall every rule of the heavenly academy. Lu Shuelon took quick steps forward and was just about to stop Xianxia. But he heard Xianxia suddenly moaning in pain as her knees fell heavily onto the ground. It was indeed heavy. When the surrounding students heard the sound of kneeling onto the ground, they all felt a pain in their knees. A heart-wrenching pain. Xianxia's hands were propped up on the ground as her palms were rubbed till a bloody scar appeared. She was in so much pain that her face was filled with tears as her expression was sinister. Lu Shuelon was also stunned by this intense sound of kneeling onto the ground as she stood rooted to the ground, not knowing what to do as she looked at Xianxia. Ting, Luo. Chapter 647. A cornered dog will jump over the wall, don't force me. That gaze was filled with murderous intent. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose as she gave a light smile. Then why don't you jump for me to take a look? Was she scolding her as a dog in a roundabout way? Xianxia gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke as the black chi in her eyes continued to revolve around her pupils, gathering. Enough. You're making a ruckus in the library pavilion, what a scandal. Suddenly, an imposing voice was heard from the entrance of the library pavilion, filled with extreme coldness. The students' gazes followed the voice and saw two figures walking in from the entrance. The lady's figure was tall and slender, her cold face was covered with frost, emitting an awe-inspiring aura. The man's figure was slender, beautiful and tall, that face was exquisite and refined, his expression so gentle as though water could be squeezed out of it. This kind of cultured elegance came from his bones. It wasn't the kind of gentleness that Lung Feng-ying showed on his face. The lady Lu Shuiyu. The man faculty council president Si Yenmu. These two appeared at the same time, causing all the students to exclaim in shock. They were still young, their attention was too easily attracted by others, and their emotions were easily led by others. Just a second ago they were still filled with righteous indignation, berating Xianxia for being shameless, but the next second, they were already respectfully greeting Si Yenmu, the president of the faculty council. This mysterious and unfathomable, elusive Sir President. Today he actually took the initiative to appear in public. The students seemed as though they were injected with chicken blood as they were extremely excited. President sister. Lu Shuelon trembled when she saw the both of them walking in together, as she timidly shrunk to one side. Lu Shuiyu didn't bother about Lu Shuelon, only using her icy cold gaze sweeping past the crowd, finally falling onto Yiqing Luo. You again. Yo, isn't this vice president? Yiqing Luo's tone was filled with sarcasm. Lu Shuiyu's cold eyes narrowed slightly. Yiqing Luo, the library pavilion is an important place for students to read and learn, not a place for you to be competitive. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laughed out. Vice President, this sentence, you should say to the person kneeling beside you. Lu Shuiyu frowned, lowering her head to look at Yiqing Qian, who was kneeling not too far away. Not knowing if it was because of anger or pain, Yiqing Qian's delicate body kept trembling. A few strands of her meticulously coiffed hair had become disheveled, sticking to her sweaty cheeks. He looked to be in an extremely sorry state. Lu Shuiyu's face sunk as she walked over and bent down to help her up. As he helped her up, he shot a gloomy glare at Yiqing Luo as though he was interrogating her. Vice President, don't worry. This for me. I'm broad-minded and magnanimous. I won't bicker with my elder sister. Yiqing Luo blinked her innocent eyes as she smiled charmingly. What's more, eldest sister has already knelt down to apologize. Let's just forget about this matter. His words caused the corners of everyone's lips to twitch uncontrollably. Yiqing Qian almost spat out a mouthful of blood that was stuck in her throat. Calling her shameless? Who's the real shameless one here? It had reached the pinnacle of shamelessness. Okay. Gambling is strictly prohibited in the academy. Lu Shuiyu berated in a deep voice. This time, because you didn't gamble with money or anything overboard, the faculty council will not pursue further. But don't do it again. After all, she was the vice president for 5 years and her prestige was right there. The moment Lu Shuiyu spoke, the entire library pavilion turned silent. Chapter 648. A series of arrangements were made in an orderly manner. After Yiqing Qian was carried down, the atmosphere in the entire library pavilion was still chilly and a little scary. Yiqing Luo remained calm and unruffled as she squinted her eyes, as her back leaned against the second story's door, as she shot a glance at Lu Shuiyu. This Lu Shuiyu was indeed more suitable for this position than Lu Shuelon. This kind of domineering and dignified aura destined her to be a leader. Lu Shuiyu was smart enough. After fighting with her a few times, Lu Shuiyu had a rough idea of her character. He knew that at this time he could not drag the matter onto her. Otherwise it would be like a snowball rolling bigger and bigger. So when Lu Shuiyu interfered in this matter, it was a series of preaching. Every single word and sentence was reasonable, and she didn't intentionally target Yiqing Luo. Not only had she minimized the matter, she had also successfully covered up the matter of Yiqing Qian refusing to acknowledge the bet. You want to say that Yiqing Qian can't afford to lose? Didn't he kneel? As for why he didn't crawl to the door and shout, "My dear sister, I was wrong," it was because Lu Shuiyu had arrived in time to resolve this farce. If she were to stop Lu Shuiyu and not let Yiqing Qian leave, if this matter were to spread to the other students' ears, it would only make them feel that Yiqing Luo was overbearing, forcing their own eldest sister to kneel down in public. They might even feel that Yiqing Luo was narrow-minded and didn't know how to think for Three Springs sect. After all, Yiqing Qian was the daughter of the Three Springs sect. Wouldn't the Three Springs sect be even more humiliated? He had to admit that Lu Shuiyu's move was very good. What are you still doing here? Lu Shuiyu glared at the students around her. As soon as he finished speaking, the students immediately dispersed. Lu Xiaoyu also left under Yiqing Luo's hint, turning back every 3 steps. Only the few of them were left at the top of the stairs. Lu Shuiyu frowned and turned her head to look at her younger sister, whose face was pale and whose eyes were filled with fear. Shuelon. She paused and sighed helplessly. Elder sister, I didn't do it on purpose. Lu Shuelon lowered her head. She had always been afraid of her elder sister. Lu Shuiyu was too outstanding. She was so outstanding that the entire Lu family only had eyes for Lu Shuiyu. Ever since she was young, Lu Shuelon had grown up under Lu Shuiyu's shadow. She was afraid of the powerful Lu Shuiyu and hated the powerful Lu Shuiyu. Acting Vice President, I have already discussed it with the elders. Thank you for your hard work for the time being. Xian Mu, who had been silent the whole time, said with a warm smile. Lu Shuelan's body slightly swayed, and her face instantly became deathly pale. This is Removing her from her position as acting vice president? Did he intend to make Lu Shuiyu the vice president again? Then what was all the hard work she had put in these past few days? In fact, everyone knew very well in their hearts. Lu Shuiyu and Si Yanmu appeared together in public. What did it indicate? It was obvious. However, Lu Shuilan still couldn't accept this news when she heard it. Little sister, you've worked hard. Lu Shuiyu gently hugged Lu Shuilan's shoulder and patted it. Lu Shuilan's body trembled. She raised her eyes to look at Lu Shuiyu and suddenly chuckled. She pushed Lu Shuiyu away and ran out of the library. Yiqing Luo kept a teasing smile on her face as she stared at them. Looked like it wasn't only her Yi family's brothers and sisters who had hidden turbulence. The other families were the same. Student Yiqing Luo, in future, please continue to take care of me. Lu Shuiyu met Yiqing Luo's gaze as her red lips were dyed with a smile. His flesh had been flipped over and his white bone could be seen. It looked extremely horrifying. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased as she had many questions in her mind, but she didn't open her mouth to ask. The ghost doctor herself was extremely powerful. There were probably less than 5 people in the entire West continent who could injure the ghost doctor. Who could it be that could injure the ghost doctor? Ghost doctor narrowed his old eyes as he stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. This little girl was indeed different from ordinary girls. When he first noticed her, it was because of her talent in alchemy and her outstanding memory that allowed her to complete his tasks in the shortest time possible. Of course, the main reason why he accepted her as a disciple was because of the teleportation secret technique she displayed. Now he truly felt that it wasn't a bad idea to have a disciple by his side. This girl was too smart to ask questions that she shouldn't. She knew when to advance and when to retreat and was sensible. Looking at the way she bandaged his wound and the way she applied the medicine, it was accurate and skilled. But moments later, after the acupoint was released, the bleeding from the wound had already stopped. Senior Ghost Doctor, go change your clothes. Yiqing Luo kept the gauze and medicinal herbs. Chapter 650. Ghost Doctor slowly straightened his body. The long robe on him, as it was missing the right sleeve, looked extremely loose. He narrowed his eyes as he took a look at the bandage on his shoulder. This wound was bandaged very well. The medicine used and the dosage were extremely accurate. Not only did it speedily stop the bleeding, it also stopped the pain. As long as the range of movement wasn't too big, the wound on his shoulder didn't feel any bit of pain. He had taken in a disciple. What a treasure. Ghost Doctor went to the secret room to change his clothes, while Yiqing Luo cleaned up the messy table as well as the blood stains on the ground. After she finished cleaning, she still hadn't seen Ghost Doctor return. Yiqing Luo frowned. Could it be that, because of his shoulder injury, he couldn't even change his clothes? Just as she was about to ask Ghost Doctor if he needed any help, she saw Ghost Doctor, who had already changed into a loose white robe, walking out. He who had changed his clothes had his hair combed again. Other than his slightly pale complexion, he looked much more spirited. Senior Ghost Doctor, can I enter? Yiqing Luo pointed to the secret room. The secret room was Ghost Doctor's secret base. It was the place to refine pills. Other than the first time Yiqing Luo entered the secret room, after she accidentally fell down, she was forbidden from entering the secret room. After all, to an alchemist, the secret room to refine pills was an extremely important place. Ghost Doctor nodded his head slightly as he turned around and walked back. Yiqing Luo followed closely. After entering the secret room, Yiqing Luo didn't act like what Ghost Doctor had imagined, to borrow his pill furnace to refine pills. Instead, she walked directly to the side of the blood-stained robe which he had changed out of, as she bent down to pick up the robe. Following that, Yiqing Luo took a spark from the torch at the corner of the secret room and burnt that robe. Ghost Doctor's pupils contracted slightly as he went into a daze for a moment, as he concealed the deep thoughts in his eyes. This young lady was really meticulous in her thoughts. As though noticing Ghost Doctor's gaze, the young lady who was burning the robe glanced sideways as she smiled. Senior Ghost Doctor came back injured and asked me to close the door of the pill refining room. Apparently you don't want anyone to know about your injury, or perhaps you're avoiding someone's eyes and ears. The young lady's clear, sweet voice was gentle and melodious. This bloodstained shirt will expose the fact that you're injured. Burning it is the best way. Yiqing Luo watched as the white robe was burnt to ashes before she swept the ashes to the bottom of the cauldron and slowly stood up. You don't want to ask me? The ghost doctor looked curiously at the calm young girl. At this moment the ghost doctor no longer had her usual coldness and impatience.